Warm welcome, everyone. I'm very excited to talk to a longtime friend of the family. Her name is Dr. Nashid Kamal. Now, most Bangladeshis will know of her because she is a celebrity in Bangladesh. And in this episode, we're going to talk about a subject that she has actually never talked about in public, and that is her dual identity. So you don't want to miss this episode because it's a fascinating, multi-layered, and complex topic. And certainly I looked up on YouTube just to see if this topic is somewhere on YouTube, and there's very little discussed. So this may be groundbreaking. Now, just by way of introduction, let me say that Nasheed is renowned in Bangladesh and internationally for her contributions to many fields such as education, health, music, literature. So she's multi-talented and has many creative pursuits. There's just so much to mention, so I'm just going to add them all to the show notes. Let me welcome in Dr. Nashid Kamal.
Hi, it's me. Thank you.
Hi, Nashid. How are you?
I'm good. And you? Happy to be in your show.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you decided to do this episode. It's going to be kind of an interesting ride because, I've faced the dual identity thing, and I wouldn't have thought that you have.
It's not a thing that I just came by chance. I've been thinking about it for a long time, especially because I was raised in Bangladesh, and I studied in Ottawa for 2 years. You remember that's where I met you.
Absolutely. Do you know that that was 40 some years ago?
Yeah, it was in 1981, January 1981, I arrived in Ottawa. So 81 and 82, I lived there, and there are a lot of transformations that I went through, which I carried with me all these years, and I have actually written about it in one of my books, autobiographical book. But as you know, many people don't read books, and the book is also in the vernacular, which means my language Bengali. It's not in English.
Hmm.
So I did want to speak about it for a long time. And most of the interviews that I've had on TV or radio are about my musical career, or sometimes about my family, and sometimes about how I juggle so many roles.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I've seen you on ATN Bangla, which is the Bangladeshi station. I've also talked to you on WhatsApp, but this is the first time I'm seeing you on Zoom. And
Yeah,
isn't technology wonderful?
yeah. We should meet up just for chatting also.
We should. We really should. But anyways, yeah, so tell me more about this dual identity in your life, because I would never have put you in that, situation of walking in two worlds, as they say.
What you had was being born to Asian parents and being raised in Canada, but mine was different. Each person has a different story to tell. So I was raised in Bangladesh and in a very cultural family where everybody is a singer or a writer or a presenter. My father was a lawyer and he could sing. He knew each and every nuances of all the songs. He was a writer, he was an orator. My mother was also a writer, she was a professor. Her sisters, they sang and danced, not professionally, but they did it for their own interest. But in the house where I grew up, this has a lot of bearing on who I am. My grandfather, Abbasuddin Ahmed, he came from India in 1947. He was a Muslim from uh, Kolkata, which is in India right now, and he came to East Pakistan in 1947. He was a very renowned singer in undivided India.
Mhm.
So when he came, he brought his music. His daughter was trained, Firdausi, that's my aunt. She was trained in the musical style. Every single day, the drum player, the tabla player would arrive, and I would watch her, practice her music. And then there was my uncle. He was 2 years older than my aunt. He was a student of Islamic history. He was also a folk singer. So
Hmm.
this is the background I give you. So I grew up there, and I was born in 58, and my grandfather passed away in 1959. So
Where
this
were you
house,
born,
I
Nashid?
was born in England, but I don't have much memories of being in England.
Sure.
So in 1959, we were brought back to my mother and I we were brought back to Bangladesh. My father is a barrister at that time. And we had a very, very cultural upbringing, especially because my aunt, she was a playback singer. And in those days, for the films, the producers, the art director, the dance director, the music director would all frequent the home. There were no rehearsal stations or recording places where you can rehearse or pad, where you do the rehearsals. Everything was in my house. So I'm seeing this art and culture going on in my house 24 hours from there, from my schooling to coming home, watching these people. I already had memorized everything. It
Hmm.
was all in me. And then when I was only 5 years old, I went to radio with my aunt. And unknown to me, this is a story they tell, that I had ventured off into the studio where the children's program was being held.
Hmm.
And I just sat there and they asked me if I could sing a song, and I could sing a song. So I thought that was a very natural thing to do because my uncle, aunt were always singing, my grandfather's songs were being played. And as a very renowned family of the country, every year during my grandfather's birthday in October and death anniversary on 30th December, we as a family would be put on the stage and people would say very, very, nice things about my grandfather, his success in life. So that's how I pictured myself.
Hmm.
I grew up like that, and when I was 6 years old, television started in East Pakistan at that time. So I was the first child artist. I was able to speak about the songs because I already grew up with them. It was
Hmm.
not that I had to go to some center to learn or keep a teacher to learn that. It was already in me. So I used to host programs and I used to sing the last song. I knew all the artists. Mashallah, I also had touch wood. I also had a very good memory. So my years 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, everything passed in the television office. I'm studying, I'm doing a program. It was like an extension of my own home. It was very near my house. My mother would drop me there, and the producers would drop me back. Maybe I had already done 2, 3 programs on TV, some for painting, some for teaching Bangla, some for singing, some for presentations. So I just grew up like that. And after my honors, bachelor's in statistics from Dhaka University. When I was in my bachelor's program, my father's friend, Dr. Mizanur Rahman, you must be knowing him, of mathematics department.
Absolutely.
He was visiting Bangladesh. And this time it was Bangladesh. It was no longer East Pakistan. And my father took me to meet them. And my father was very worried that I was becoming such a cultural entity. Everybody followed me. That time we didn't have so many YouTubes or any of these channels. But people were my fans. They would write to me. They would appreciate my speaking abilities, my singing, my knowledge of various art forms, especially the musicals. And I was invited to the most exclusive programs to host people like Mehdi Hassan from Pakistan, or maybe Pandit Jasraj from India, and I was able to host them when I was in my teens.
Hmm.
So my father introduced me to Mizanur Rahman and said, Nashid is studying statistics, and she thinks she's on top of the world. She thinks she's somebody already. So I want her to go for higher studies. And I didn't want to go at all. I had other opportunities earlier. 4 years earlier, I had a scholarship to go to Boston. Many of my friends went, but I didn't go. I was very fond of my saris and my role on television and this, meeting all the luminaries of the world. But my father had the foresight. He thought I would be stuck there. I should have further exposure. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I went to Canada for my master's because Ms. Anchacha was there. My father agreed to send me there. And once he came to the airport to receive me, I stayed 3 days in his house, then went to the hostel, the Glengarry Commons, Carleton University residentials. And then my journey started. This is the first time I'm living outside of my home. I've never lived anywhere else before.
And
I'm
on
no
your
longer,
own as well, on
yeah,
your own, right?
on my own, and also I'm no longer the television personality that I grew up from age 6. Okay,
Hmm.
I'm no longer from the Abbasuddin family, no longer daughter of so and so, etc. So I shed all of that, and I am just a student who is like any other student. And the first 2 3 months I felt really miserable. I felt it was also very cold, and I was not used to this kind of cold weather in Bangladesh. It's always sunny and beautiful. And I don't know how to tell my father that I don't want to study here. I want to go back to Bangladesh. So sometimes I would just cry and write letters that I don't feel like staying here. But gradually, around May, the tulips started blooming and that kind of cold started disappearing. And then I got to meet Mrs. Bhatnagar. She's called Nandita Bhatnagar.
Hmm. Yes,
There's one
I do know
gentleman.
her. Yes.
Yeah, there's one lady, Shelly Kabir. She
Mhm.
introduced me to Mrs. Nandita Bhatnagar. She was an exponent of Tagore songs, and she would spend long hours with me trying to understand who I am. She was like a counselor actually. She was became like a mother, and she'd tell me, this is your opportunity, you're on your own, you must discover what it is to be like on your own, who you are, and there are many other avenues you can discover. So that was a very nice relationship I had with her, and she introduced me to another lady, Srinivasan.
Oh, yeah.
She was the dancer.
Mhm.
um, she was the dancer, and she was the dance director of Nandita De's daughter, Kanina Bhatnagar. So Kanina had an Arangetram. I was not familiar with the word Arangetram. This was the initiation of the student when she becomes mature enough, like a debutante.
Oh, yes.
She has taken dance lessons, and this is her first appearance as an adult person. She's there to show her, you know, abilities and what she has learned from her teacher. So I went there because Nandita Di wanted me to sing a few songs as background music for Kanina.
Hmm.
That's how I got introduced to the cultural scene. Then there were other people who were going to have a Tagore festival and many other things. Gradually, I had transported my Dhaka life to Ottawa.
Hmm.
I was able to study the 5 6 days of the week, and on weekends, I had performances myself. I would address the Urdu speaking population, the Pakistanis and other Indians who speak Urdu, and I got an got an opportunity to hear their mushairas. And when they heard that I am a singer, they asked me to sing ghazals. So I had a collection of 4 or 5 ghazals. So in my pastime, I would always hear ghazals and write them down. I was fluent in Urdu. And I had a huge collection of ghazals which I could sing. Then I was traveling to other places from Ottawa to give performances. And this whole of Canada, once whole of Bangladesh was my avenue, now whole of Canada became my avenue. And it's not only the Asian people with whom I communicated, I had roommates who were Canadian and they had their friends. Then we had our, campus life, going out for camping, things that I had never done earlier, and making new friends, even Indian friends, Sri Lankan friends who are neighbors of Bangladesh, but I hadn't I didn't have the opportunity earlier to befriend such people who were from Mysore or was from, you know, Ceylon or wherever. So I used to
Now,
play with,
now you were in your 20s. And
yeah.
so I'm just wondering, how was it to have that Bangladeshi identity, which you said much of it was discarded because it no longer made sense in the new place that you were at. How did you, transition to that Canadian lifestyle? Like, was there
I
an
did. I,
adaptation?
I just did. I'm a very friendly person. And I remember in January 1981, I had two roommates, and one of them, her name was Kathy. Kathy had a friend nearby, and she said, let's go to their place. And I was starved of my local food. Naturally, in the halls and common residences, we were eating the common food. So
Right.
I said, okay, let's go there. We did the groceries and I cooked the chicken curry and pulao and everything. And we all ate together. I made friends with them. So this kind of making friends really gave me an opportunity to see their lives, to see from their point of view, to look at myself as an individual instead of being from that family or that family. And
Mhm.
everything that I had, even earlier being on television, I had this easy way of making friends with people
Mhm.
because I was interviewing so many people, because I was performing with so many people at the same time. Unknown people in some of the dramas I acted, unknown people were my co artists. Okay.
Mhm.
So this, I had already bridged the gap. So it was kind of the same thing.
So you
And
didn't really have the
no,
cultural confusion at all.
no,
Like,
no, no,
it
no, not
was
at all.
a seamless transition
It,
into
it was very
Canada.
nice transition. And
Mhm.
I could see that, everybody adopted a winter sport because they lived in Canada, which was so cold, and most of the months were like that. So I said, okay, I want to swim with you. I had never swum before. So I went to the swimming pool with Kathy and Anne, my roommates.
Mhm.
Went swimming. I didn't have a swimming costume. I went in my full dress. And I remember Anne saying, everyone is going to stare at you because you're in your full dress.
Right, right.
And I asked, is there a ladies' hour? He said, what? Ladies' hour? What would you do with ladies' hour? I said, in Bangladesh, in the clubs, there is a ladies' hour. Ladies just swim by themselves. And when the guys come,
Mhm.
they have, the mixed hours are not for the ladies at all. He said, Nashid, I've never heard anything so bizarre. There's no ladies' hour or gents' hour. So
Right,
all of that is removing lot of, cultural inhibition from me. And that
right.
then I went out with them, bought my swimming costume. It was hilarious to wear it for the first time, how I looked. And I was hesitant that, all these people are going to be there, but nobody knows you. Nobody's going to
Right.
give you a second look.
Right, right. And so, in terms of the values and the cultural norms of Bangladesh and the practices, traditions, you didn't feel that there was a difference that you had to
Lot
navigate?
of difference. Lot of difference. I was
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
Yeah. I was a tutor for the junior students, and one of my juniors who was tutoring under me, she came with her boyfriend, and I sat. The boyfriend also sat. We did the sums together, mathematics together. Then next week she comes again, and there is another boyfriend, and I tried to observe all these things that at young ages, what are the things that they are doing, how their parents are accepting. In Bangladesh during that time, 81, 82, it would be unheard of to have a boyfriend and then 1 week later to have another boyfriend. Or even people didn't think that girls and boys needed time to discover each other. Women need to know what it is to have a man friend, and vice versa.
Sure.
These things were not culturally accepted. If one lady during the teenage, if he or she gets involved with somebody. Gets involved means what? Not even holding hands. Maybe they've talked on the phone and they've expressed their love to each other. Teenage is sparking with hormones.
Right.
So boy loves girls and girl loves boys. It's nothing so uncommon. So I saw that. I watched that. And
Hmm.
then my friends, they would always say, "Oh, my first boyfriend, he was like this." Okay. My Canadian lady friends, they would say, and I was the first boyfriend. What was that? We
Oh,
can't talk about, even though every woman, every man experience these things. It's something that we don't talk about in
true.
Bangladesh.
That
And
is
I saw how easily these relationships were discussed. And I remember one time, this is very interesting. I had very long hair and I used to have a little bun on top of my head. So I had a little free time between my classes.
hmm
And I went to the cafeteria and I sat there. I had pins for my bun. So I took off all the pins, I put them down next to my table, and then I redid my hair, without any mirror or without any comb. I
mm,
just did my bun again. This is very common in Bangladesh, okay?
right.
And I put the pins back in their place. And one of the boys, Canadian boys, he was at the other table. He came and sat next to me and he said, "Were you beckoning me?" I said, "No." He said, "You were doing your hair. That is a sign of beckon."
Ooh.
That, come on. I knew him from before. So I said, "No, no, I wasn't. It wasn't a hint at all."
Mm,
So that was something I learned. He told me, Nashid, if you want to do your hair, you go to the ladies' room, you take out your comb, you do everything over there, and you come back over sitting. And I said, I had very little time, and it's my own hair that I'm
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
struggling with. So these are small things that came to my mind. And I really enjoyed during the summer when I saw other people, young lovers sitting across in the grass. Nowadays in Bangladesh, you will see young lovers sitting like that. They're talking
Sure.
to each other,
Sure.
they're
The world
exchanging.
has changed.
Yeah, but at that time it wasn't possible like
Hmm.
that, and it gave me a lot of joy to see. It made me lonesome too,
Hmm.
but it also gave me a lot of joy. And the other thing that I did was, for every semester break, I used to take the mm, visa for USA, and I used to take the bus bus service, Voyager bus.
Yeah.
And I used to go to one part of USA and then go to another part and meet my friends who were also studying there and see their partners, see their attainments, get to hear their experiences. So I traveled all over America from one end to another,
Hmm.
from LA to wherever,
Yeah.
maybe Illinois or Oklahoma, Ohio, from the other end, Florida. So all of that gave me a lot of exposure. And then I thought of myself as an international person. When I came back 2 years later, I was no longer the same Nasheed.
Right. And so you went back, after your education. I think you did your master's in statistics at Carleton University, and then you
The
went back.
PhD I did later. First, I
Right.
first I finished my masters and went back to Bangladesh, and I
Okay.
got married. I got my two children. 10 years, I started my job right away. Within a few months, I started working for Dhaka University,
Okay.
and after 10 years, I went to England with my two children for my PhD. That time, I'm much more seasoned. But my time in Ottawa is something very, very important that helped build up my character, gave me a worldview, gave me a deep look into many things. For example, I had a Punjabi lady. She was my friend. She was a little bit older than myself, and she was divorced and she lived alone. I don't know. I have met anybody who lived alone in Bangladesh. Everybody who was divorced or widowed or never married, they lived with their extended family.
Hmm.
And her name was Pushpa. I remember her name also. She invited a few of us to dinner. And that was a big eye opener for me that, People can have, without a partner, you can have your own life, your own set of friends. And it did shape me in many ways.
Okay, so you have this experience in Ottawa, your mind is expanded, and then you go to Bangladesh, where um, you're back to the old cultural norms and values.
Yes.
Uh, did that confuse you at all? Or,
No, that did not confuse me at all. My family is also very, culturally and education academically, they're all very progressive.
Mhm.
But I had a lot of difficult times in Ottawa.
Okay.
They remember the dance that we did
Yes, we did on Canada
uh,
Day.
on Canada Day.
Yeah.
That was you, me, Connie.
Yes.
That's three, and three others. They were married. They had their spouses studying there, and some were working there. Yeah, they found it very difficult that I was having all these exposures, going off to America, having friends visiting me. They found it very difficult that I was so progressive. I found it a very difficult time to be fitted in with people living there, not the people whom I came back to.
Rashid, here's
Like
the
that.
thing. Here's the thing. There are people who come and they are also facing the dual identity. They're just not aware of that because the identification with the Bangladeshi part of themselves is very, very strong. But the mere fact that they are in a country where the dominant culture is, different. Um, they don't realize the impact that that has had on them and that they themselves have transformed, you know?
And their
So,
children, when they have their children, they understand that the children are growing up in a different background, very different from what they had experienced, and they are willing to accept many of their behaviors, just as I said, of having the first boyfriend or having, America Canadian husband or Canadian wife. Everything gradually becomes acceptable,
yes, yeah.
but gradually they get used to the idea.
And that's because, you know what? They've been here 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And so they are affected by the dominant culture. And
Yes.
certainly, like you said, if they have children, well, the children were born here often, they've been raised here, they have some ties to their origin, but it's not exactly the same as their parents. And sometimes that causes a bit of dissonance
It
between
does.
parents and children.
There is a bit of that in inside a country also. Some parents have had rural backgrounds and they have transitioned to very urban areas where they put their children to urban schools. Their behavior is completely different from what they grew up with. The parents grew up with their extended family. The children grew up isolated. They have their mobile phones and they're just they just like to be connected with their own generation. Other than that, they don't like to hang out with cousins, with uncles, aunties, etc.
Mhm.
So you face a bit of that in a society which was agrarian earlier and is transitioning to different world settings.
And so there's always this generation gap because, the kids live in sort of the future.
Yeah,
As Khalil Gibran said, uh,
yeah,
to,
they're born through you. Yeah,
in the
they're of this
poem.
world. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that,
So when I went back many years later, it was very nice to see all these families. And I no longer had the grudges, I got over all those emotional anger. And I met everybody, and it was very nice to see everyone with a different and everyone was so happy to see me.
mhm,
And I could see that they had also gone through this path of transitioning
yes,
from being
they
only Bangladeshis to becoming
exactly.
Canadians. accepting different cultures. Their children are marrying outside the religion. Their children are marrying outside Bangladesh. All of that is gradually becoming. But mine was much faster because I was on my own to adapt to anything.
Right.
So
And
I,
anytime
I,
you're a pioneer in some ways, a woman on her own here
yeah.
in Canada,
And this question they
it's
would always
trouble.
ask. This question they would always ask me that your parents didn't marry you before sending you here.
Hmm.
I thought,
Right.
why aren't they asking me such a question? What
That's
has got
right.
marriage got to do
Hmm.
with this? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
see, there we find, but my family was much more progressive, and my mother, she was a professor herself, very highly educated. She was from Columbia University,
Mhm.
so it was her point of view that made us so highly educated, all sisters. Apart
Mhm.
from being culturally active, she wanted us to attain much more.
And I'm sure that, having that duality, like we all do, any immigrant, we all have come from somewhere else and or are born here with roots somewhere else. And so in that sense, everybody is straddling this bicultural identity, so
Yeah,
it's
that
just,
way
yeah.
that way it was very fortunate. In England, when I was studying for my PhD, I was also singing on the side, like I said. So I went to one of the concerts, and one of the boys of an immigrant living in UK, I remember his name. He came up to me and he said, "Auntie, I envy you." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I live in UK. I was born here. I grew up here. But you know your culture, and I don't know my culture."
Mhm.
So I could see his sadness. He was a very bright student, a medical doctor from Cambridge. He works in Texas now. But what he said was an eye opener for me to know, to deeply know your own culture. Then you can accommodate from any other culture, and there is no fear that I shall be losing my own culture.
Hmm. Hmm. And so it's actually this dual identity that we all have uh, is an asset because it's increased our ability to understand more than one culture. And therefore, we could have maybe more empathy because there are people with multiple identities, because when
Right. In
factor.
in Bangladesh,
Mhm.
we see this Rohingya problem in Burma, and there are thousands of people who have migrated from Burma to Myanmar
Mhm.
to Cox's Bazar. They're living there. What about their language? What about their children? What about their expectations? So I can identify that they're having a hard time
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm. And
adjusting to the cultural differences.
exactly. And so you were doing things that was a little bit groundbreaking at the time. And so you did feel misunderstood by
I
many
did.
people.
I did feel misunderstood. And I also another point I want to make that when I was studying in Dhaka University, I had many friends who were also studying in the same department, and they lived in the hall residences, and they always complained about the food there. They were from where everybody doesn't live in Dhaka. A lot of people live outside Dhaka, so their families sent them. They lived in the residence halls, and when I lived in Canada resident halls, I remembered my friends in Bangladesh who talked about the food, who talked about the hours kept by the residences. You could do this and you couldn't do that, etc. I had never lived in the residences. I lived with my parents all the time.
Mhm.
So this was another eye opener, like you said, to have empathy, to have the understanding of the other side of the coin. If I wasn't there, I wouldn't have known. I would have thought that everybody lives in their own homes, and why are they talking about returning to their hostels?
Mhm. Mhm. So there's
So
some common ground that
every life offers you some kind of experience, which otherwise you would have a flat life.
that's
That would
true.
be so boring.
That's true. So how has that dual identity enriched your life?
It really has enriched me like anything. And later on, for 3 summers, I went to India. I was in Mumbai, and I was in touch with a lot of Indian students who were of different religion, different nationality. Sometimes they came from Sri Lanka as well as Maldives, and just with very much ease, I was able to mix and mingle and be one of them. This is in my musical world, and otherwise in my PhD program, for example, there were so many students from so many different countries. I could just fit in anywhere,
Mhm.
and even in my research, when I'm writing the research, just the sociological understanding of various countries. I'm writing about India. I'm writing about Nepal. I'm writing about Peru. I'm writing about China. Okay, so I have not lived in these countries, but by just experiences the variety of living in Canada with so many different denominations of people. It opened my eyes, and I was able to read and become. I was a Chinese when I'm writing about Chinese contraception, sterilization, two-child policy, etc. Okay, I'm a Vietnamese when I'm writing about Vietnam's war. I'm a Nepalese when I'm writing about HIV/AIDS in Nepal. So this versatility, flexibility, understanding, you have to be, it's like an acting when you're writing or researching. You have to be in those shoes to understand that what pains or what good things they are going through.
So it's really helped you with
A
a
lot.
deeper understanding of the world, really.
Then my mothering as a parent, a lot of Bangladeshi families send their children abroad for studying, and they don't understand that the children are growing in different direction.
Yes.
When they come back, they cannot fit in. They have lot of fights with their parents. Sometimes my daughter's friends would come and stay in my house and say we had this fight, that fight with our parents, because the parents remain in that same place.
Mhm.
4 years back, they sent their children. They don't realize that the child has come back with all these cosmopolitan outlook. But people do remain in the same place. And my children have told me that, Mummy, you are the only mother who tries to know how we are growing. You try to know us. I,
Mhm.
tr- I went and lived with them in London every year, just trying to know them because as teenagers, I need to see how they're growing. But
Well,
most parents don't do
actually,
that.
that I really feel for the adolescents and young adults because, they are in another world. They have more connection with the dominant culture, and
Right.
they're trying to bring their parents along, uh,
Yeah.
and but they have all these, issues themselves, like they're as an adolescent you're having to deal with your physical, emotional, and social identity, and then you add on top of that this bicultural identity, and there's a lot on the plate, and i
Yes.
and I had that.
I didn't let my children do that. I tried to befriend them so that during their adolescent years they are truthful to me. They don't have to be two ways.
Exactly, and that's what I did. And part of it was that I grew up here in Canada, so of course I knew everything that went on. So I'm more open and free to let them experience life,
Or explore. Yeah.
explore, and learn. I empowered them to take control of their lives.
But that's not very common here in Bangladesh. And sometimes my other friends who live in Canada or live in Norway or wherever, they have told their mothers that Nashid auntie allows her children to explore and experiment. But you have, because once you're with your partner, Bangladeshi partner, it's very difficult for people. I was without a partner for many years. I learned to have my own life. All of that changes in me. I would say that having lived 2 years in Ottawa and several years in UK gave me another perspective, which I wouldn't have had if I hadn't gone at such an early age without a spouse.
Hmm.
I was free to learn whatever I want to learn.
Right, right. And so um, I think this has been a really enlightening discussion, and the first of many, I'm sure, because I actually thought that maybe as somebody from a South Asian community, that I would be facing such things. But you've got another variation on that theme. And then I read this book recently. It was an Estonian woman, Caucasian, blonde hair, and yet she was trying to figure out, is she Estonian? Is she Canadian? What parts of her? And really explore both identities.
Yes.
So it's,
One of my friends, her name is Rumana Chaudhary. She lives in Toronto. She has written a book.
mhm,
She has written a book. I forgot the name. I think I mentioned this to you earlier.
mhm,
Who am I, or something like that. It's who am I, or where will I be, something like that. She talks about a girl, Moina, who was raised in Toronto, Canada, but
mhm.
she's originally from Bangladesh. So her parents tell her to behave like a Bangladeshi, but here she is with her peers. She has a different identity. So, Where Do I Belong? I remember the name now.
Yes.
Where Do I Belong by Rumana Chaudhary. Those who are interested can buy this, is available on Amazon.
Mhm,
It's very interesting because she herself has lived for more than 40 years in Canada. So
mhm.
she's able to see the perspectives with which the young adolescents are growing up.
I have to say, though, Nashid, that the community that you left in Ottawa has evolved significantly
I'm sure it has. Yeah.
over, the many, many years, 40 years we're talking. And
Yeah.
so, you'll be happy to see that
I
if,
am happy to
yeah.
see. I go back from time to time and I have discussions and I can see what I was thinking 40 years back,
Mhm.
40, 45 years back is where the society
But
has come today, which is nice to see.
these are the issues of people who are pioneers, who are breaking ground, and you're definitely one of them. And I really thank you for having the courage to speak so openly about these topics because I think it's important to speak about these subjects. It helps everybody understand that, hey, we are all immigrants in Canada, okay?
Right, right.
Human beings have explored and discovered new lands. Everybody's moved to different countries. We all have dual identities or multiple identities. That's just a fact of life, really, if you think about it. And so it's not a big deal that we have that, and it can enrich our lives,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's what it is. So
Isn't it beautiful?
it is, it is. And on that note, I want to thank you so much for entertaining this groundbreaking discussion.
Hmm.
Really appreciate seeing you too. Yeah, hopefully this content will stimulate discussion in various communities about the issues of identity, dual identity, multiple identities, etc., and a little bit of thought
Yeah.
about these things to help, people adapt to the different places where they are in any part of the world, really. So,
Hmm.
so thank you
Okay,
so
thanks for
much
having me. Yeah.
again. Okay. So, to the audience, I want to say if you enjoyed this open discussion about dual identity and biculturalism, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. I'm sure we're going to have more discussion on this. This is just the beginning. And comment. Thank you very much for watching and take care, everyone. Bye-bye.